Welcome to chapter 22. In this chapter, we are, among other things, going to revisit a very important derivational suffix in Mari and look at its range of functions in a bit more detail. And we are going to meet another compound past tense, the third of four that we are going to meet. So before we get to that, a quick note on the word order. So as we already learned in chapter 1, the basic word order in Mari is subject, object, and verb, and oblique elements then usually between the object and the verb. But the reality is often messier than this. There are Mari allows deviations from this standard word order to a much greater extent than English does. I mean, English does too, but within limitations. Like in English, with a neutral way of saying something would be, I'd like to see this, but you can also say, well, this I'd like to see. And as is the case in English, when you say, oh, this I'd like to see, even though lexically everything stays, semantically everything stays roughly the same, you're shifting around the information structure. You're shifting around like where you want to lay the focus, etc. So if you can say, for example, Joschka Ola, Dene Kildarten, with Joschka Ola are connected the lives of many famous people with the Republic. So this is not the neutral way of saying this. The neutral way of saying this would be Republikese, Shuko Lümle, Yang, Yengen Ilishije, Joschka Ola, Dene Kildarten. But here we are already talking about Joschka Ola, and we want to say it's with Joschka Ola that the lives of many famous people are connected. Or here, Yaratem Meiteyam, where we have then the love verb at the beginning of it. Yeah, this is then also we're shifting around the focus in this case. So be prepared for some variations of the normal patterns that we see. So derivational morphology. I promised that we were going to revisit suffix, and that is the valency decreasing alt that we touched upon last week as a revision when we were looking at the causative KT. But let's have a look at it. First off, about the realization of the suffix. I have the version LT without an A in parentheses here, a variant of the suffix. The choice of these two is based on the stem, and it's not completely transparent. That we have, for example, mushkash, to wash, where the reflexive form is not what one would presume, mushkaltash, but mushkaltash. And pochash, to open, we have pochaltash rather than pochaltash, which would be one would predict. If we look in the corpus, we can see that Maris actually, they do make this distinction, but not 100% without any deviations from it. So like even Mari speakers are sometimes not entirely sure. Same with pochaltash and pochaltash. And likewise, if we take something like the regular yamdalaltash, to prepare oneself, here you also find the version with yamdaliltash, with a reduced vowel rather than an a in the corpus, but like less than every 1,000th usage of this. So it's rare, but it happens that the Maris themselves get these things mixed up. But point of it is basically you have to learn this as a lexical distinction, you have to learn with individual words how they are formed. So the range of usage of this suffix, it is pretty wide, and it is always things where the valency is reduced by one. We are getting rid of one slot in the verb in some shape or form. We can be reflexive, like soldiers defending themselves, the child washing itself. We don't have a slot for an object anymore because the object is subject, it's reflexive. Oops, sorry, it can be passive in something somebody is subject to an action. Like, Fabrike gestaltet, a new factory is being built. This is of course not reflexive because the factory is not being built. It is being built by an unnamed third party. In theory, we can have with Dene, especially inanimate forces of nature can be marked with Dene here, like if something is being washed by the rain. Prescriptive grammar would tell you that you cannot have a backgrounded agent like this, like as you would in English when you say I was seen by my mother or something like that. But in speech by young Maoris, you do encounter it on occasion. I've even seen it in written texts, and that can be understood as a Russian influence because Russian does allow for backgrounded in the marking of backgrounded agents, and it is with the instrumental case in Russian that they are marked, and so this is being just transferred into Mari. So Dana is used for that. Yeah, we've got some like just intransitive usages where it's kind of hard to put them into any of the categories, like to open, which in English it can be either transitive or intransitive. I open the doors, I open the door opens. In Mari, if we have a verb like puchash, which is transitive in its basic, meaning you can add the ult to it to make an intransitive verb. And yeah, I mean, this could be, it could be in theory, it could be passive, or it could even be, reflexive if the door is opening under its own weight or something like that. But basically, hard to put them in the categories. Or like transferring, where we have kuzarash, a transitive verb to transfer, like somebody transferring somebody somewhere else. But if you are transferring to another company and you're not saying how it happened, if you did it yourself, if you were sent, it's still a good bet. And this is very exciting, is that we can also use it to create true impersonal clauses where we can have, in theory, an accusative object, which we're going to see in the next page. So if we say like Oshno Shukolodalten, in the old days, a lot was read. Seine Leiten, well, it was lived well, basically. If in these clauses are set apart from what we have before, in that the slot that is lost here is not the object slot, but the subject slot. In these impersonal clauses, we cannot have a grammatical subject. And yeah, here we can see an accusative object. Kniga matludalten, even books or were read. Books were read as well, where if knigamat with an accusative, the books were read. So the object slot is alive and well, but we cannot have a subject in these clauses. This shukertsek ujalten ogel, that's we can see this as just a standard phrase. Long time no see. Long time one has not seen each other. Yeah, and oftentimes these this impersonal construction is used often to sort of also to indicate sort of a lacking volitionality in the action. It's something like life was well, we lived so and so or so. It's like nobody had any agency in determining what life was like. That's just how it happened at the time. Yeah. Okay, compound past tenses, compound past tense 3. So we've already met 1 and 2. Those we can, those were relatively easy to classify as habitual past tenses. Compound past tense 3 is a bit trickier. Its formation is nice and easy. You just take the forms of the past tense 2, positive or negative, and add ille afterwards in all persons, regardless of the form. So you can see in to yourself if you can form these, but yeah. Here they are. And yeah, nothing much to say about the second conjugation, works exact same way. Here you even then see the forms of to be, where we then would use liash in the second past tense and add ille afterwards. The usage is a bit tricky. Some reference materials will call this the past perfect, the pluperfect, the plusquamperfect, or something of the sort. The first coupled with then compound past tense 4 coming soon being the second one. We don't do that in our textbook for the simple reason that this is not the normal way of, so I mean past perfect being like I had read the book by the time the class started. So something happened before something that's already in the past. And this tense is not the normal way of expressing these things. The normal way of expressing such things, if we have something that is before something that was in the past, is through a converb, the converb in meke. This tense is used and a range of situations that include, for example, if we have, so yeah, what I was just saying, if we have something like I finished after I had finished writing the exam, I left, for example, a clearly cut, planned temporal progression of events, we would use the Mecke converb or even the Adetschwara construction, like after writing the exam, I left or so. The compound past tense 3 would be used more if we had like a planned action, like writing an exam, but before I could finish writing the exam, I noticed that the school was on fire and I ran out of the room. So it is you were in the process of doing something, but you were interrupted. The natural progression of events was interrupted and you went off to do something else. And that is a prototypical situation where you would use the compound past tense 3. Another situation in which you would use it is if you have something, and now this is sort of touching upon like domains where we have compound past tense 1 and 2 already. If we have some activity like studying at university, and we're talking about something that preceded it, but something that was either habitual, like I used to go fishing in the countryside before I left to university, or if it is something that was just like long lasting, like I used to live in a big house before I moved to the city to study at university, then you would also use compound past tense 3. So if you have this combination of habituality and being temporarily before something that is already in the past tense. So yeah, so it's not a completely extraterrestrial thing to call this the past perfect plusquamperfect or something of the sort, because there are like usages that go in this direction. It's just the fact that it's not the basic way to express that kind of temporal structuring, why we chose not to use those terms. Okay, here you have some usage examples that you can look at on your own time. Next point that we have is the formation of indefinite pronouns and adverbs. And this in Mari predominantly happens through prefixes. There's also one suffix, we're going to meet that later. Well, this is surprising for an SOV language. They usually don't have many prefixes, but just in the domain of indefinite formation, prefixes are very popular in Mari. So if we have, for example, mo, where, we've already met the negative forms. Oh, sorry, this is wrong on the slide. It should be kusto, where, mo is what. If we have kusto, what, kusto, where, I'm going to fix this on the slide set that I upload on the website. Kusto, where, we would have ni gusto, nowhere. But then other indefinite forms that we're meeting this week are alla kusto, somewhere, and iktash kusto, anywhere. We're going to look at the distinction between the two now. And there are some forms which we are going to meet in the course of this textbook, but not yet. Kere kusto, which is like wherever, catch kusto, wherever. Yeah, don't worry about them now. So ni gusto, that's just negative. Nowhere. Alla kusto, when I said somewhere, it's a specific, specific unknown is that I assume it is that there is a place where something exists. Like, oh, I can't find my book. I know it's at home, it must be somewhere. I know that that there is a place in my flat where the book is. I just don't know where it is. So it is specific, but not known to me. Like a known unknown. I know it exists, but I don't know where it is. Whereas iktash kusto, anywhere, would be if I don't even know if the place that I'm talking about exists or not. Like, I don't know if there is nature as beautiful as this anywhere else in the world. Well, I just said, I don't know if that place exists where the nature is as beautiful as this. It might, but I'm not defining myself. And so this is a distinction you have in English between some and any. It's more complicated than that, but it does sort of work like this. Like, think of the difference between somebody and anybody. If you're talking about if you're talking about calls between, let's say, a professor and a secretary are talking, and the professor asks, the secretary tells the professor that somebody called for them, but I don't know who. I'd say somebody called. There is a person that existed that called, but I don't know who it is. So somebody. If we flip it around, the professor asks, did anybody call? The professor does not know if the caller even exists or not. So it's an unknown unknown. Yeah, and that's the difference that we have between Allah and Ikdash and Mari too. And yeah, Kerek and Ketch and Gnat, we're getting back to these in later chapters. Yeah, and the formation is quite regular. You just attach these prefixes to the verbs. And any question word, be it an interrogative pronoun like mo, what, or an interrogative adjective like kushto, where, just attach it to all of them, and you get your indefinite forms works, as far as I can tell, without exception. So another point that we're going to look at, this is something that is borrowed from Russian, and it is both the conjunction and the structure is borrowed from Russian, and this has been borrowed from Russian into many languages that have been in contact with Russian. In Mari puito, going back to Russian butto, it means that, like the conjunction that, but it is marked by epistemic modality, meaning it is marked by how much trust I am expressing about the statement. Like, many people think that I am rich. I'm using puito here rather than a different version for that, which we're going to look at soon, which would be manen, because I am expressing some doubt here. It's implied that I'm not actually rich. Many people think I'm rich, but actually I'm broke. I heard that there is going to be a meeting tomorrow, but I heard it from my colleague who never remembers times and dates, so I am uncertain if I actually believe that. So you are marking your doubt of sorts. And it can also, another function it has is as if. The weather is so hot today, as if summer had come back. Why are you as happy as if you'd won $1 million, euros, rubles, whatever? So here it is. Here, this is now not marking doubt, but hypothetical. So it is very much a conjunction of the unreal in a way, or the uncertain or unreal. Words and words usage, what have we got in this chapter? So savernash, to is literally just like to turn, but it is also intransitively to turn into something, to become something. Isn't it nice when we have similar polysemy in different languages? Like English and Mari, and both of them turning can also be becoming. Like he turned into a really nice person or so, which has nothing to do with the rotation, of course. Savernash can be used as this, and it then by its government uses the illative case. And as a consequence, we can also then sometimes find animate nouns marked with the illative, like becoming a good person, turning into a good person, which, as we heard, theoretically, according to prescriptive grammar, you're not supposed to have the local cases, animate nouns in the local cases, but in practice, you do encounter it in cases like this one by its government. Savernash wants to have the illative. Yeah. Next point in word and word usage, I have not much to say beyond what is standing here. Asking for directions, how you would talk about getting to different places in theoretically in the city, practically more likely like in a Mari village or whatnot, just talking about how to get from X to Y. The next point that we have seral and serale, beautiful, another synonym in addition to motor and silne, which we have already met, with a somewhat difficult range of usages that is somewhat difficult to delimit. If we look at the corpus, if we look back at motor and silne, we could see that the collocations are somewhat different, that motor seems to be a more feminine beauty, and silne seems to be a more masculine beauty. I know how problematic that sounds, but that's what the data shows, that you would more likely say Silnemari for a beautiful man, like a handsome man or whatnot, and Motor more likely with a girl or a woman or such. If we look at Seral and Serale, we see two things. Firstly, it's not that easy to delimit a range of like a semantic domain where it fits in. But the most common collocations are also with a man, but then also with like a picture and autumn and the such, and life and places. And also the distinction between when do you use Seral and Serale. You might expect it to be like Yoshkar and Yoshkarge, that one of them is attributive, like Yoshkar Ola, a red city, and the other one would be predicative, like Tide, I don't know, Tide Suret Pesh Yoshkarge, this picture is very red. But this doesn't actually hold in practice. Seral and Serale are both used both attributively and predicatively. And yeah, Seral is used way more commonly than Serale, but yeah. So basically the range of these two words is not quite as trivial as one might have hoped. So in this chapter, we are learning the names of some specific birds. Not much more I can say about it. The text in this chapter pertains specifically to Yoshkar Ola, the Red City, the capital of the Mari Republic. And it's a hypothetical dialogue between a tour guide and a tourist being shown the city. Pro tip, Yoshkar Ola is on Google Street View. So you can actually go on Street View and walk around town and look at all of the places that are mentioned in this dialogue. And the YouTube clip in this chapter pertains to competition in which the 7 wonders of the Finno-Ugristik word were found and chosen. So that's it for this week. See you next time.